call, please.
Mr. Alt?
Here.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Claro?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mrs. Love? Here. Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes? Here. Mrs. Shipley? Mr. Bentz?
Here.
Julie Donovan? Jacob Smithula?
Let the record show that Mrs. Shipley had a work engagement this evening. Before we proceed with citizens' comments, I'd like to take a minute to introduce Tracy Kuhar. Tracy's our new assistant principal. Started, 3 weeks ago? So, welcome.
Citizens' comments. Before we call up the first person, I just want to do a regular reminder of the rules for citizens' comments. Please be advised that citizens' comments is your opportunity to present your information to the board regarding our agenda items and/or Southmoreland schools. It is not expected to be a dialogue between you and the board. Do not expect any remarks or responses to any comments that you make today. It is our intention to take these comments seriously and resolve such matters as deemed necessary. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually. Also note that we will not permit any statements that exceed 5 minutes. You will be notified when you have 30 seconds remaining to speak. We also cannot permit any statements that are personally directed or obscene, abusive, or irrelevant as decided by the presiding officer. All speakers must preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and any group affiliation if appropriate. This is to ensure that only Southmoreland citizens or those deemed as such are speaking to the board. Thank you for your interest in Southmoreland School District. Citizens' comments, please.
Catherine Fike.
This is on, yes. We live in a nation where we elect people to public office whose responsibility it is to represent their constituents. It is their job to do research and to discover the needs and wishes of the people that they represent and govern accordingly. Unfortunately, in reality, it often does not work that way. At a previous school board meeting, the legislative liaison spewed out the PSBA propaganda and stated, quote, "The Southmoreland School Board must take the position that school property taxes must be kept. The goose that lays the golden egg for special interest groups must be kept alive. Let the taxpayer sacrifice and suffer." 10,000 families, including children in Pennsylvania, lose their homes every year because of unfair, punitive school property taxes, which are predicted to double by 2020. I respectfully ask the board to produce research regarding their position as to the elimination of school property taxes. Meanwhile, I will present mine. At 2 local events, attendees were asked if they wanted to sign a petition to our Pennsylvania legislators to pass HB-SB 76 to eliminate school property taxes. Here is the result. Every one of these pages contains 4 signatures and complete personal information signed by these individuals who want property taxes eliminated. There are 1,051 signatures. Here is further evidence of the constituents' feelings regarding this matter. This is just a recent copy of the homes in Westmoreland County that were put up for sheriff's sale in September. 2 of the sections of our school district lie in Fayette County. This is the Fayette Legal Journal. These are the homes in Fayette County that are up for tax sale right now. I am publicly requesting that the board conduct its own research and provide to all of the people that they represent their results. After that is completed, the board then can state their position as to the state legislator to accurately reflect the verified position of your constituents. Now, we've shown you ours. You show me yours.
Excuse me. Mike, can I ask her something? What's going to make up the difference in the taxes if you do away with property?
Okay. We have run these figures through the OBM, which is the Office of Business Management, and it is a combination of two things, and it's called a tax shift. Right now, you pay a 6% sales tax. They will add a 1% sales tax across the state of Pennsylvania that everybody pays, not just property owners. Secondly, there will be a 1.8% increase in the personal income tax paid only by people who are employed. When they are not employed, it stops. Those two things will completely support the public school system.
Thank you.
It takes away the punishment from simply homeowners. The fundamental premise of our efforts has been we believe in true home ownership. We believe that you have the right to own your own home and not rent it from the government. If you don't pay your taxes, they don't put you in jail. They come and take your home. Those two sources of income will completely eliminate school property taxes.
Thank you.
Marcy Bentz.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the board members on your lack of concern. I sent each of you a lengthy letter with multiple photos, and one of the final comments was that I would appreciate a response from someone on this board. I included my phone number for your convenience. It's only been 7 weeks. I'm still waiting for the phone call. This is quite appalling since I know all of you on a somewhat personal basis except Mrs. Shipley. If we were to meet on the street, I would certainly speak to you, but none of you can call me to discuss my concerns. Perhaps it would be more important if it was about an award or a sports team, but I'm only concerned about my child's safety. I have a few questions for you, and I'm going to read them as I know you cannot answer them at this time. Please understand, these are not rhetorical questions. I'm a parent who wants answers to them. Some of them have been asked before. They still remain unanswered. Here they are. When my daughter was assaulted at band camp, there was no administrators in the building. Why was no one called to oversee the handling of this situation? This made Monica feel the need to return the following day to see the principal. Why was I told falsely by Dr. Santamont that I could press charges if I could not?
Allowed to say any names?
All right. So surely your administrators should be educated on how this works. I was not educated, but I have my education now. If you will not pull the assailant from marching band, why is he permitted to do other activities? And the one I'm talking about specifically is the high schoolers come to the elementary school to show them how to be orientated with instruments. That should be something for band members of good standing. I hardly think that applies to the assailant in this case. If this is an adult world, he would not pass a criminal history test to be present on school property, I would think. The marching band handbook. It addresses discipline on page 9. I'll provide my copy to you because I had to ask the director to get it because it's not on the website when they say it is. But it states disciplinary actions for Southmoreland marching band members can include but are not limited to those found in the Southmoreland Code of Conduct: loss of performance privileges, loss of travel privileges, loss of privileges and awards, dismissal from the organization. And I want to know if purposefully inflicting a fellow member with enough force to cause a head trauma that lasted for 5 weeks is not sufficient to get dismissed from this organization, what would you have to do? When I asked the band director, he said, maybe multiple events. That's nice to know. Which brings me to the next question. What was done with the other victim in that day? Monica was not the only victim, there were 2. I was told that there would be charges pressed for her as well. Did he get punished for that other person or charges pressed on her behalf? I don't know. These are not rhetorical questions. I expect them to be addressed and to be answered, and I expect a call from someone on that platform to discuss that with me. And please do not relay your information through Mike. He didn't write the letters, I did, and I would like someone to talk to me. I'm going to leave this for you, so you'll have a copy of the questions and also the handbook with that disciplinary action. Thank you. And I'm leaving to go to marching band practice.
Minutes.
It's recommended that the board approve the minutes of the September 14th special voting meeting.
Need a motion, please?
So be it.
Motion by Mr. Beistel, second. Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0. One absent. Accounts.
It's recommended that the board approve It's recommended that the board approve the September 2017 Treasurers Report and the September 2017 Bills Payable Report.
Need a motion, please? Motion by Mr. Calero, second by Mrs. Love. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. District Depository.
Recommended we table this item, Mr. Calero.
Auditing services.
Yeah, we received proposals for auditing services. Does the board desire to review those proposals, or would you like administration to review them and make a recommendation? Generally, since the audit has a lot to do with what we as administrators do, it might be in the best interests of all concerned to have the board take a look at those as well. So if there's a committee of the board that might be interested, maybe Mr. Bentz could appoint a little committee.
Okay, do you need that this evening, or
It would be, yes, we'd like to do that for next month. We'd like to.
any volunteers? Mr.
What is it
Calero?
exactly?
We have an internal auditor. His contract is up, so we solicited proposals from other outside firms. We received 3 in addition to a renewal from our current auditor. So we reviewed them, but we would like a second set of eyes from the board to review them as well. Ken?
So myself, Mr. Calero, Mr. Fry, and Mr. Alt.
That's fine. You'll call me to let me know when?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to spearhead that? All right, very good. I'll make sure that there are enough copies for you to go over. You might want to make copies of those tomorrow.
Board reports, student reports are not present. CWCTC.
I have no report, Mr. President.
Thank you. WIU report.
I have no report.
Thank you. PSBA liaison report.
Yes, I have a report. Probably already did, so I'll go over it anyway. Governor Wolf is looking to borrow against the Pennsylvania Farm Show Complex and the Expo Center to help fill a projected $2.2 billion deficit and make payments to schools and service providers. The State House of Representatives failed to pass a tax package the governor would support. Wolf said a farm show lease back is expected to yield $200 million upfront to be paid back with interest over 29 years. Our state government is now over 3 months into its fiscal year without an approved revenue package to fully fund a nearly $32 billion budget bill that was passed June 30. Wolf is also looking to borrow $1.2 billion against revenue from the state store systems. On Tuesday, Governor Wolf announced that the Treasury is loaning money to cover short-term expenses, but Treasurer Joe Terselli said, not so fast. He said the loan is not authorized until Wolf provides more details on how to balance the state budget. Wolfstead alone is justified because he's personally making sure the budget will be funded, and that includes, number one, borrowing, like I said, against the State Liquor Control Board; 2, leasing out the Farm Show Complex; 3, not filling approximately 1,600 empty state jobs; 4, selling buildings; 5, consolidating agencies; and 6, potentially not allocating $600 million in funding for several state-related colleges and universities. It's unclear how much this will generate. No official version of the plan has been released. Trisselli said the announcement was premature. Wolf said somebody had to step up after Standards & Poor's said in their downgrade that it was the uncertainty, the fact that nobody was stepping forward to actually take responsibility for the financial well-being of the Commonwealth. House Republican Speaker Steve Miskin said nothing has changed. Expectations for short-term cash flow and pending payments to school districts, Medicaid providers, and others who rely on state payments. And he said all the payments will be made on time. I guess that's a relief for us right now, but I think it would be a good idea to contact our representatives and urge them to work together to resolve this budget and funding issue. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
My report this evening will focus on last year's PSSA and Keystone results, as well as some other statistics for you, and I have those as a visual, so if you'd like to step down to the tables, we'll lower a screen.
So with any luck here, the projector will work. I guess it takes a little while for that to brighten up. This is the 16-17 State of the Schools report. I had hoped to be able to talk to you about the Pennsylvania school performance profiles, which are now, I think, going to be called the Future Ready Index. We were promised those by September 29th. It's October 12th. We don't have them. So I'll give you what I have, and then as the buildings the principals present each of their buildings, they can talk to you about their respective index scores and growth scores as well. So obviously we always have some things that we like to celebrate. Pittsburgh Business Times has again named us the most overachieving district for the third year in a row and the fourth most overachieving district in the Commonwealth. Our middle school for the second year was named the National Breakthrough School. Very, very few schools are able to be named a breakthrough school the second time, so we're very proud of that. 5 bronze medals from U.S. News & World Report for our high school. We had the Blue Ribbon School at the elementary level a few years back. Governor's Awards for Excellence back in 12-13. All things PLC, we were the only district, as far as I know, in the nation, to have all of our schools listed on all things PLC. Some improvements that we've made this year: we transitioned our emergency plan from paper to a mobile emergency response plan. Previously, every year, we would have to reprint our emergency plan. We would bind it, we would put it on flip charts. It would be in teachers' desks, usually in the right-hand top drawer. And whenever something happened, they'd have to remember to grab that plan and run outside with it. And every time it needed to be updated, we had to print and print and print. Now, those emergency plans are on everyone's smartphone. So when teachers leave the building, they have their smartphone, they can log on. If there's a chemical spill, they can hit on a little button that says chemical spill, and the protocol as to what they need to be doing is right there. They also have an opportunity through that program, if they become aware of something, they can actually sound the alert from their smartphone and begin the evacuation process or whatever needs to happen. So we think that's going to improve our emergency response a great deal. We've completed our energy savings project. We were able to tour that before the meeting last month. We had thought about doing a newsletter, and I think we might have even done one. The mailings and the printing are very cumbersome and very costly, so we moved into the 21st century. Now we have a presence on Facebook and a Twitter presence and a superintendent's corner on our webpage where we're trying to keep everybody up to date with what's happening here. We've also entered into a partnership with the National Math and Science Initiative to improve the rigor, especially in our AP and upper level classes at our high school. A lot of new faces and new places. Mr. Lee, as you know, retired and wasn't replaced. Mr. Clara and Mr. Mashia are assuming responsibility not only for their own buildings but the SES building. I think they've both lost about 30 pounds so far just running back and forth between buildings, but they're doing a good job. I introduced Tracy to you a little bit ago. A number of teachers moved into our second grade positions. I won't read all of their names for you. You can read those. Some of those second grade positions that were vacated moved to other grade levels. Patty Croft retired, was not replaced. Donnie Culp, one of our secretaries, retired and was not replaced. Charlene Pritz at SES was replaced by Amy Yezik. Some of our paraprofessionals moved around. Judy Hagerman is a new paraprofessional this year. Anna Darlene Smith was a retiree. As you know, Dr. St. Amant resigned. We welcome Jessica Nishef to middle school reading. Our foreign language teachers are now splitting themselves between two buildings, and you know about our school police officer. So how'd we do? Well, let's look at grade 3. And what I tried to do is give you a 15, 16, 17, it's a 3-year running report. But last year in English Language Arts, we were at 73.4% advanced and proficient in grade 3. We bumped that up about 3% this year, and that compares to a state average here of 64.6. Our math in grade 3 dropped by about 3 percentage points in terms of the number advanced and proficient, but still almost 20 points above the state average. In grade 4, English Language Arts went from a 62.9% advanced and proficient last year to 76% this year, so that was a nice jump compared to the state average, which is 58.7. About a 4-point jump in math, so we're pleased with that, compared to a 46.8% advanced and proficiency level in for the state, so we're almost 20 points above the state. Science did drop by about 3 percentage points from 92.2 to 89.6 advanced and proficient, but still well above the state average. Our 5th grade English Language Arts showed about a 4 percentage point improvement. I'm rounding off a little bit, well above the state average. Math went from 47.3 to 60.3, so that was about a 13% gain in math. So we were quite pleased with the number of students advanced and proficient this past year compared to the year before, comparing very favorably again with the state averages. Grade 6, we had a slight drop in English Language Arts from 82 to 79%, but well above the state average again. Slight increase in math from 67.2% of our students advanced and proficient up to 68.7%, compared to 40% for the state. Grade 7, slight drop in English language arts by about 3 points, and about a 1.5 point drop in math. So we have a little bit of work to do in 7th grade in terms of getting those numbers going in the correct direction. But again, still well above the state averages. Grade 8, 77.7% from the previous year up to 81 last year. So that was a nice little jump compared to the state average again. 50% were advanced and proficient in math 2 years ago. That jumped by about 11 points for this year compared to 32 at the state level. And 68.5% in science, that jumped up to 72.4 compared to 52.6 at the state level. So you can see in most areas we're seeing some nice little jumps in our student proficiency levels. Algebra 1 Keystones, a select number of 8th graders take those, only those 8th graders who are involved in Algebra 1. And of the 8th graders tested, 97.7 of them were advanced or proficient in Algebra 1. So we're quite happy with that number. Grade 11 Keystone exams. Literature, you can see we went from 75.8% proficient to 87.2 the following year, to this past year 88.6. That compares to 72.7% statewide. Again, algebra was climbing as well, 65.4 to 73.6, up to 82.3% advanced or proficient, compared with 65.6 at the state level. A little jump in biology, but still not anywhere close to where we would like it to be, but 63.4% went up to 64.5%. We were, last year, we were at this year's state average, so we're a little bit above it right now. So when we look at those numbers, they don't really mean anything until we start to compare them with our peer groups. So the first thing I did is I compared us to Westmoreland County. And as you can see, the yellow line represents all Pennsylvania districts. The green line here represents Westmoreland County, and the blue line represents Southmoreland. This chart starts in 2008, so you can see in 2008 our proficiency levels were a little bit above the state but well below the county. And then in 2011 we had a nice jump, and we stayed well above the county. 2015 was the year the test changed, and everybody kind of bombed that year. But as you can see, we are on an upward trajectory again in terms of our overall PSSA results when we compare ourselves to the state and Westmoreland County. Similarly, in Fayette County, this is Fayette County on this line. This is the state, and this is us. It's the same. Our numbers have not changed, but you can see where the green line there is. And then I took and looked at similarly sized schools, and then the program I used picked 10 similarly sized schools from across the state based on not only the numbers of students but the free and reduced lunch population as well. So they tried to get schools who were very similar to us, and as you can see, we are outperforming all of those. And then we looked at schools with the same socioeconomic status that we have based on census data, and you can see we're scoring well above those on our PSSAs. Then we looked at Keystones and did kind of the same thing, and you can see from 2015, this is English Language Arts. It only goes back 3 years because prior to that it was a reading test, not an English Language Arts test. But you can see we went from 76% up to where we were this year, at 88%, I believe is what it was. When we compare that to Westmoreland County, you can see we ranked second in the county in terms of our English Language Arts Keystone proficiencies. Quite proud of that ranking. When we looked at our math, that goes back to 2008, and you can see our math kind of came up, went down, and then we had this really nice spike, and so far we're holding that spike, and we were this year third in Westmoreland County in terms of our math. Biology, again, as I showed you earlier, we did drop a little bit in biology, and we are number 13 in the county with biology. Comparing us to Fayette County, English Language Arts, we topped that chart topped the math chart, and we were third out of the 7 Fayette County schools that we were compared to in biology. Similarly sized schools, we were second in English language arts, first in math, and somewhere a little bit below the middle of the pack in science. And looking at socioeconomic status, schools that are like us, we were number 2 in English language arts, number 5 in math, and that would be about number 7 in science or biology. Next thing I wanted to look at was our revenue. The blue line again represents us. The green line represents our peer group, which in this case is Westmoreland County on this slide, and then the yellow is all revenue per student. So as you can see, most of the state is collecting, in terms of their average, more revenue per student. Westmoreland County, we've kind of fallen a little bit below, and now we're just about on the average of where Westmoreland County is in terms of the amount of revenue collected per student, and that would include both local and state and federal funding. Then I compared us to Fayette County. Again, the state was up here. This is Fayette County here, and our revenue is slightly lower than our peers in Fayette County. And I looked at those 10 similarly sized schools, and again, we are somewhat lower than they are. And schools with similar socioeconomic status, as you can see, we're quite a bit lower than they are in terms of our revenues coming into our coffers. The next thing I looked at was per pupil expenditure, Westmoreland County, and you can see we were a little higher over here in 2011, a little lower in 13, 14. In 2015, we started to catch up, and the latest figures we have are 2016, and we're just about where our peers are in Westmoreland County. We're a little bit below our peers in Fayette County, a little bit below our peers of similarly sized schools. And again, these are all 2016 figures. The program was not updated with 2017 numbers. And again, with schools with similar socioeconomic status, you can see we're actually quite a bit below where they are. Then I looked at average salaries. This is our Westmoreland County peer group. This is the state, and this is us. Now those figures don't tell us a lot. That could have something to do with contracts. It could have something to do with the years of experience of the faculty. It could have, there are a lot of different variables that go into this average salary. But I just gave you the average for now. Comparing us to Fayette County, we're not a whole lot dissimilar to Fayette County. Similarly sized schools, our average salary is just a little bit higher. And compared to similar schools with similar socioeconomic status, we're a good bit lower there. Then I looked at student to teacher ratio, and I found that our student to teacher ratio in most cases is about 1 student per teacher less than our peers in Westmoreland and in Fayette and similarly sized schools and similar economic status. So we're within about 1 student per teacher in terms of what our student to teacher ratio is. Then I looked at staff to administrator ratio, and I'm going to ask you to disregard that number. We don't know why that number is 30.6. I think it was a reporting error because our staff to administrator ratio, to the best of my knowledge, was not that high in 2012 and certainly didn't dip that much between 2012 and 2013. But if you look at that, basically we have about 23 staff members per administrator compared to our Westmoreland County peers who have about 21 and a half, and compared to the state who are down in the high teens. Similar to Fayette County, similarly sized districts with the same and socioeconomic status. Ours was a little higher again. So how are we doing? We're doing pretty well. We're not doing as well as we would like to be doing, obviously, but we've done pretty well. We've shown some improvement in our academic areas. We're continuing to align our curriculum to improve our scores. We increased the rigor at the high school several years ago, and we're finally seeing the fruits of those labors. With NIMSY coming on board and partnering with us, we expect to see even better results moving forward there, especially with our top performing and our AP kids. We expect to see some really nice results with their AP scores. We'll continue to concentrate on PVOS growth. We had some slight improvement there last year, and we're looking forward to this year's growth measures because we believe they're going to be a little bit better than they were last year. We reduced our administrative staff by 1 principal, our secretarial staff by 1 secretary, and our teaching staff by 1 teacher. Our motto is, we can do this. We always try to raise the bar and close the gap. We remember that students are the constant, and what we do with them every day is the variable. So our mission, as it always has been, is high-quality learning for all. That includes the students and the teachers, children and adults. We've agreed not to just try to survive, but to thrive, and I think our results show that we're doing that. We're committed to systemness, so that our elementary schools and our middle schools and our high schools are working hand in hand to make sure that there are no gaps in the curriculum. We will continue to focus on learning through developing our collaborative culture and focusing on results, and we'll continue to demonstrate respect and belief in students through the promotion of effort-based learning. Our goals haven't changed. We're continuing to increase the number and percentage of students succeeding in our most rigorous curriculum. We're continuing to improve our student achievement and growth on statewide tests. We're continuing to create the conditions that promote the ongoing job-embedded professional learning that's vital to the continuous improvement of educators. So in other words, we don't send people out very often to sit and get, but rather we engage in our action research here in the buildings to make ourselves and our curriculum better. We recognize that effective effort is the main determinant of achievement, and we will constantly promote effort-based learning in our practices, policies, and behaviors. When we talk about effort-based learning, we want students to understand that what we do here is important. They are capable of doing it, and we're not going to give up on them, even if they give up on themselves. As I tell my faculty every year, it's not about us and it's about them, because we're the captains of the dream factory, and we want to make sure our factory's producing at full capacity. And if our teachers are the captains of the dream factory, you 9 folks around the table are the generals. So we'll continue to make that happen. So I can entertain questions at this time if you have any. Thank you for your kind attention.
Should have waited till everybody got up.
As the school year progresses, our principals will be able to give you more details on how each of their buildings fared as soon as we get those SPP scores. That's it. Thank you.
Solicitor's report?
I received an email today that the litigation that Southmoreland is involved with, the former employee Linda Butine, has a conference scheduled with Master Gary Caruso Our insurance counsel, Susan Roberts, informed me of that today, and that will be in November. The purpose of it will be more informational and probably setting up a deadline and case management order for when deadlines for different parts of the case have to be completed. It's not listed as a settlement conference. I had sent out a memo, but I don't know if it made it into the board docs, in which I expressed concerns about one of the 707, one of the policies in the 700 series, policy 707, as in the new plan. And I would ask that the administration send that out to you before you vote on that next week, or I'm sorry, next month, or whenever the 30 days would be up. My big concerns are that it may be playing too loosely with Section 775 of the school code, which requires the school board to approve the, quote, rules and regulations. And the policy recommended by the PSBA guidance policy that was given to you in that form leaves a lot of loopholes to be determined by administrative regulations. I cite some other concerns in my memo, which you can read. I won't go further into that. That concludes my report.
Thank you. New business, posting of policy 700 section.
It's recommended that the board post the following policies for a 30-day review period. Policy 701, facilities planning; 702, gifts, grants, and donations; 703, sanitary management; 704, maintenance; 705, safety; 706, property records; 707, use of school facilities; 708, lending of equipment and books; 709, building security; 709.1, school security officers; 710, use of facilities by staff; 716, integrated pest management; 717, cellular telephones; and 718, service animals in schools.
Any questions or comments on those? Need a motion?
Make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Polakowski, second. Second by Mrs. Love. Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Ault?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Comprehensive plan.
It's recommended that the board post for a 30-day period the Southmoreland School District's comprehensive plan, which is listed on your board docs under public content.
Need a motion, please? Motion by Mrs. Love, second. Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Ault?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Intermediate Unit Number 1 agreement.
It's recommended that the board approve an agreement with Intermediate Unit 1 to provide Title I supplemental education services to non-public schools designated by the home district, including the Diocese of Greensburg, Connellsville Area Catholic School, and Vernon Montessori School for the 2017-18 school year.
Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second. Second by Mrs. Love. Questions? The solicitor advises that I should have him make a statement before we vote.
I was asked by Mr. Benz to give an opinion as to whether he could vote because he is an employee of Intermediate Unit 1. And in my opinion, he can because, number one, the intermediate unit is not an entity organized for profit. And number two, he's indicated to me that he is not personally involved with the program described in the resolution, doesn't personally benefit from it in any way. just happens to be an employee of the intermediate unit. That being the case, in my opinion, it does not violate the state ethics law, and you can vote.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Transportation contract.
It's recommended that the board authorize administration to solicit proposals for student transportation beginning with the 2018-19 school year.
Need a motion, please? Motion by Mr. Calero, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Polakowski. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero? Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Licensing agreement.
It's recommended that the board approve a license agreement with R&H Theatricals for the lease of scores for this year's spring musical production.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Love, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Rhodes. Questions?
Question.
Mr. Calero?
I read the contract where it's approximately $1,500 is the
Yes.
cost, and we had set aside
20.
20.
There will be additional costs,
I realize that
obviously.
there will be.
There will also be some fundraising that will help to defray some of that. Yeah, the hope is that rather than spend all the 20, that they can actually spend part of that and start a little fund in the activity fund to, fund future programs.
Even with the additional expenses that aren't listed in the contract, it shouldn't come to 20.
We would hope not. If it does, the fundraising will cover it, right?
Any more questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Cancellation of October 19th school board meeting.
It's recommended that the board cancel the October 19th, 2017 meeting due to a conflict with the PASA-PSBA School Leadership Conference.
Need a motion, please?
So be it.
Motion by Mr. Beistel, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fry. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero? Yes. Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Anti-bullying committee.
Administration recommends that the board form a subcommittee to serve on the district-wide anti-bullying committee.
I appointed Mrs. Rhodes as chair. So anyone else that wants to serve on that bullying committee?
Make a suggestion.
Mrs. Love?
We'll also have some administrators who have already been chosen, some teachers, and then we will also solicit parent representatives from each building as well.
Sure.
Thank you. That would be Mrs. Love, Mrs. Polakowski, and
Mr.
Mrs.
Polakowski.
Rose. Yes, Mr. Polakowski. My apologies, sir. And Mrs. Rhodes.
We don't need to vote on it. do we?
No.
Okay. Need a motion to recess for personnel. Motion by Mr. Calero, second by Mrs. Rhodes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Second by Mrs. Rhodes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Resignation of nurse's assistant.
It is recommended that the board accept with regret the resignation of Amanda Vielma as the nurse's assistant for the primary center and authorize administration to advertise and post the position.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Love, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fry. Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Retirement of a kindergarten teacher.
It's recommended that the board accept with regrets the resignation of kindergarten teacher Brenda Mayers for the purpose of retirement and authorize administration to post and advertise the position.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Beistel, second. Second by Mrs. Love. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Calero? Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent.
Promissory note. It's recommended that the board adopt the following resolution. That the school board rescind the resolution adopted on September 14, 2017 for an installment agreement with Dr. Tanya Sainamont for repayment of a tuition reimbursement due to this district. And the school board authorizes administration to bill Dr. Tanya Sainamont for the amount due and to include the form of the promissory note attached hereto as an acceptable repayment plan to be executed by her and returned to the superintendent by October 30, 2017. Motion, please.
Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Calero, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Beistel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Calero?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Benz?
Yes, motion passes 8-0 with one absent.
That's it.
Citizens' comments?
I have two issues of concern. Several years ago, the suits from the bureaucratic something or other, economic improvement, whatever, asked this school board to vote to allow Acquion to move into a facility that is located in our school district. At that time, myself and a board member whose name I'm not allowed to say warned the board not to do that. I'm sure most of you were not really happy when you picked up the Tribune Review and saw the headline, Acquion leaving the county to China. After receiving $18 million in grants and loans from our taxpayers, they literally took the money and ran. I wonder if any of the board members who voted for that accept responsibility for their vote, after they were warned and witnessed what Volkswagen and Sony did to us. There's an old saying, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I think we've had enough yet. But the second concern I had as I watched the presentation today, and I have a real concern. I think there are actually 502 school districts in Pennsylvania. When the Southmoreland student scores were compared to districts our size and of the same socioeconomic status, do you know that there are literally hundreds of them in Pennsylvania? Who picked the ones to which you compared Southmoreland? Or did you compare 100% of them?
Now, there's a program called IDEX, and you click on similar districts, and it does the algorithm and comes up with the districts that are most similar to ours. So it was
They could be
chosen by
most
a
similar.
program.
They could be most similar.
Right.
But you can also pick the 5 worst ones or the 10 worst ones and compare them to Southmoreland, or you could pick the 10 best ones and compare them to Southmoreland. I have real concerns about how that research was done. And the other thing is, are you going to present to the public a comparison of our students who made advanced placement? You did proficient, but I didn't hear the word advanced. You know, when you say that our kids do better than Franklin Regional, okay, I'll accept that. But I think we need to get some information about advanced placement.
Sure.
And I really do question how these comparison schools were selected.
Good evening, Jan Kiefer. Sometimes the simplest things can carry the biggest weight. I've been watching the community and the teachers' involvement in the parade every year, and they throw out the penny candy, the Tootsie Rolls, and stuff that's really not food, it's just a chemical. So I'm going to go to the parade here in a couple of weeks, and I want to see if the teachers will respond and not do to break that tradition. And I'm not going to make a case why they should or why they shouldn't, or how that applies to the wellness of the children in the community and the school district. But I will look at it as a test to see how our community responds to something really as simple as not throwing candy down to children being a member of the school district. I don't think you have authority to tell them to do that, but I think you have persuasive power to do that, and we'll put you to the test. Good luck.
Any board members have anything for? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mrs. Rhodes, second.
Sure.
Second by Mr. Beistel. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 8-0 with one absent. Good night. Thank you.